Hey, welcome to the St. Canard Files, a Darkwing Duck podcast. I'm your host, Mike Russo, bringing another bonus episode your way. And Will came up with an interesting idea recently. We both thought it would be really cool to pay tribute to the various Darkwing Duck voice actors and actresses who have left us over the years. There have been some really amazing people who worked on Darkwing who have passed on. And I think it would be nice if we just talk a little bit about them, some of the roles that we remember, and why they're special to us. And Will is busy, so he can't be a part of this episode. So I invited along my good friend Bill Yadesky to join me tonight. How's it going, Bill?
Pretty good, Mike. Nice to be back again. Didn't think I was going to be back after my last recording with you guys, but I'm glad to be back once again to cap off a nice tribute to our favorite voice actors.
And before we get into that, a really important anniversary is actually happening today. Depending on where you lived and what station you watched TV on, today may or may not be the 30th anniversary of Darkly Dawns the Duck's television premiere.
Yes.
Bill, did you watch Darkwing on September 6th, or was it a different date?
I watched it on that Sunday night, and I remember it was a Sunday night because, to my recollection, not only was the Darkly Dawns the Duck premiere, which followed the Mickey Mouse Club Back to School special, right, which was a great experience for me, that whole two-part episode. But I remember watching the music video that was created, and I remember that lead-in to the video where Darkwing was talking about, and here we are the night before the children of America go back to school, sort of, and he talks about, saying that there's one more thing he must see, or that we must see, and that's the world premiere of his video. And it was exciting because, I have this new character that I'm completely getting into, and the corny 90s but catchy rap video. And
I love that rap video.
I know, but it was like an event back then. So for it to be 30 years later, pretty much on the nose, it's awesome.
I'm not 100% sure Darkly actually ever aired on the 6th, but I hear it did. Because like you, I watched it on the 8th. I watched it on Sunday. I didn't catch the whole thing, but I did catch most of it. But for me, my first episode would have been That Sinking Feeling that aired on Saturday the 7th.
Right.
But technically, if you want to get super technical, on the 6th, that Friday, they did preview the episode on TGIF. So that would have been where I first saw some of that episode. So for me, I guess the 6th was a pretty big day.
Yes, for sure.
So Darkwing, it's your 30th birthday.
Woohoo! Happy anniversary, DW.
Happy birthday. It's Darkwing's birthday. Happy birthday to you. I kind of stole Donald Duck's birthday theme. But yeah, 30 years ago. Oh my God, I feel so old.
Seriously.
I can't believe it's been that long since Darkwing has been a thing. Like, I can't believe 3/4 of my life has been spent loving Darkwing Duck.
Yeah, that basically means that, I don't even want to get into my age just from hearing that, but wow, that's a long time.
And it's been a decent year for Darkwing fans. We got some decent merchandise, either already has come out or is going to come out. Much better than we did last year. I think we might have done better if it wasn't for COVID, but Disney just isn't big on celebrating these shows to any serious extent.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy we get what we do get. The Q figure, that Beast Kingdom thing that's still not out and probably won't be out till next year.
The Disney Adventures, Disney Afternoon comic that just came out, that was fantastic.
The Shop Disney pin, the limited edition pin that came out. So we had a few things, the Funkoverse attachment set. We never got those books that we were supposed to get.
No.
I don't even know if either of them are coming out at this point. I have to talk to Tim Van Hall. I haven't heard much about his book, and the Disney approved one that was supposed to come out to promote Ducktales, honestly. And now that show's been over for months, if they cancel that book entirely, I wouldn't be shocked. And we're still waiting on our finished DVD sets, but which we're never gonna get.
Fingers crossed, but at this point, I mean, I'm just glad that they're all, for the most part, available on Disney Plus. So that's a good thing.
All but one, unless you live in Malaysia, apparently.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So, okay, moving right along. We are going to be talking about several voice actors and actresses who are no longer with us, who have voiced many different characters on Darkwing Duck and beyond. But we picked 6 in particular who voice characters on the show that we want to talk a bit about. So first, number 1 is Hamilton Camp. Bill, who is Hamilton Camp?
Well, for all you Darkwing and in general Disney Afternoon fans, Hamilton Camp is the voice of Fenton Crackshell, aka Gizmo Duck.
That's what I know him for the most. There is really no denying that. Like, for me, Hamilton Camp is Fenton Crackshell. Camp was born in 1934. He's the oldest person we are talking about tonight. But I would say Camp had a very distinctive voice that no matter who he voiced on anything he was on, you can always tell it was him.
Yes.
What is your favorite Camp voice? Would it have been Fenton?
It would have been Fenton. I'm trying to think of some of his other voices. He had done so many random appearances in several of the Disney Afternoon shows. I know he was featured in probably almost every one. I know he was in Chippendale Rescue Rangers.
Yeah.
He was definitely on Bonkers.
Yes, he was a couple of villains on Bonkers.
Yeah, a couple of villains. Yeah. Goof Troop, he definitely voiced a couple of the incidental characters. I think maybe like a mayor here or there. He always seemed to have, like, I feel like Hamilton Camp's voice was could be split into 2. He had a very, very distinct low voice, but then he had that kind of airy and flowy and almost rustic sounding voice, like very Old West type of voice, if you want to call it that.
But anytime his characters got angry and started screaming, you knew immediately that was Camp, because he had a default sound to his voice that you always knew it was him. I know he was on Tailspin too.
Yeah.
Wasn't he Seymour from the Whale episode?
Yes, I remember that. I guess Kit would always coax Seymour into saying, Seymour into saying that, what was the whale's name? I can't think of.
Moby Dimple.
Moby Dimple. He would say, Moby Dimple's so uncomfortable in there. And
he likes it.
He likes it cozy, yeah.
Yeah, that's how Camp talks a lot of these characters.
Yeah.
Where's my whale?
And that was great. He was I think he was in a couple other non-Disney Afternoon shows, like Tiny Toons. He was there was the Flea family, and I think he was like the Scottish Flea.
Those Flea episodes. Oh my. that's them trying to repeat American Tail.
Yes, pretty much.
I can't watch every episode of Tiny Toon Adventures. The good ones are fantastic. The bad ones are really bad.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he was all over the place. But what I loved about Fenton and Gizmo Duck, it's the same voice actor and the same character, but he came up with two very distinct voices that despite that, there is a vocal connection there. You could still hear Fenton and Gizmo Duck, even though the voices are somewhat different, and I've always loved that.
Right.
And Fenton just had such a unique sound compared to the rest of the DuckTales cast. And I just remember when Super DuckTales first aired, and the very first time I heard Fenton, just thinking this is such a loony character compared to DuckTales, so compared to everybody else on this show.
Yes.
And then when he gets in the suit and he's talking like Gizmo Duck, it's just such a great vocal performance. I always loved it so much.
I will always say that one of my favorite performances of as Hamilton as Gizmo Duck / Fenton is that part in the Super DuckTales 5-parter that he's battling that robot that was guarding the money bin, and he's just going back and forth and talking to himself. He'd be like complaining and both trying to I guess push himself on, saying, "I love my job. I love my job. I love my job."
Oh, he was fighting the GICU too.
GICU too. That was it. Yeah, exactly.
I see you too, GICU too.
You wouldn't hit a lady with glasses, would you?
Yeah, and like in the episode, A Case of Mistaken Secret Identity, when he wants to tell the nephews who he is, and he's like, "No, I can't tell you, but I must. Gizmo Duck happens to be. No, I can't tell you." And they're like, "Are you okay?"
I will say that to kind of quote what Hank Azaria said in a documentary I've watched recently, if you have a voice actor that's doing an impression, like doing that character, doing an impression of somebody else, that makes a good voice actor. And that's exactly what I think Camp was doing for Fenton, because Fenton was creating a voice for himself that's not himself. So I found that to be just so fun. I enjoyed it thoroughly. But it really like amped DuckTales up completely.
Camp took over the show just based on that voice.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you look at Fenton, there's not too much to him. He's just Donald Duck in a tacky suit, but the voice just brings him. I mean, they gave him alliterations to say, just all sorts of wacky nonsense, and he's like, there's the first 65 DuckTales episodes, and there's a Hamilton Camp show, basically. DuckTales turns into the Hamilton Camp show towards the end. And I love it. I love it so much for that. I mean, I love what Lin-Manuel Miranda did on the new DuckTales, but he was no Hamilton Camp.
Right.
So moving on. What? I'm sorry, Bill, what?
But he did write Hamilton.
Oh, was it campy?
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Next we have Kenneth Mars, who was born in 1935. So just a year younger than Camp. We all know what Kenneth Mars sounds like. He's got that deep, powerful voice when he needs it. Of course, on Darkwing Duck, Bill, who did he voice?
He was the actor / director extraordinaire, Toscanini.
I am not Toscanini, and this is an excellent disguise.
Action.
I've grown to appreciate this character a little bit more as I've gotten older. I don't think he was in all the best episodes, but I think the character himself is fine. What do you think?
I mean, I always enjoyed, the Toscanini character throughout the show, and Mars's portrayal of him was fun, quirky. It had its ups and downs, but I mean that was the sound I think that they were trying to look for. This very distinguished larger than life character. And like with Mars, he's got this baritone voice that can really like, go up at times. And again, that was like a bit of a roller coaster sometimes. Trying to follow along with him, but his pronunciation of everything was just great. And whenever he went from fun and quirky to angry real quickly. And that was one of the things I enjoyed about that voice that he brought.
Yeah, I think Tuscanini is a character who basically lives and dies on that voice.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite Tuscanini line of all time would have been when Darkwing, Launchpad, and Goslin are the Mad Duck Mallard gang, and Drake says they're going to steal a zillion dollars, and Tuscanini goes, "Well, you see, I'm a reformed criminal, and how much did you say?" And Drake goes, $1 zillion. And Tuscanini says, "Not that reformed." It's so great. But honestly, if you're a Disney fan in general, I think you know Mars best as King Triton.
Yeah, I remember being a kid, and again, like this is just the type of stuff I found interesting as a kid, was pinpointing voices that I knew sounded a lot alike, and right away I made that correlation very early. I was like, oh, this is Ariel's father, and the voice wasn't too far off, but it was definitely more grounded for Triton, because you can't have a bombastic character being serious like that. So that's why that timbre was brought down some, and it's soothing as King Triton when he's not yelling, that is. But
Ariel.
yes.
Yeah, we are a big Mermaid household. My wife and my daughter love that movie. It's my wife's all-time favorite movie. So
it's a good one.
Yes.
It was the Renaissance starter, so
Absolutely. And Mars also did Triton on the TV show and the first sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you being the Tailspin fan you are, he was on that show.
Heimlich
Menudo. That was Val Play.
Yes.
For our friends who might not know Tailspin as well, that's the skywriting episode.
Yes.
That one's a really funny episode. And he's good in that one. But definitely overacts a lot more. And maybe that's when they're like, this guy's great. We got to give him a Darkwing character.
It's a shame that they didn't expand upon that, because I feel like that could have been kind of like a Darkwing villain, a Darkwing style villain for the setting of Tailspin. But I guess a one-time role was all that he could get.
He was also Vulcan in the Ducktales Valentine special.
Right.
And yeah, he's all over the place. You said he was. What movie did you say he had a great live action role in?
So he was he was the police inspector, Hans Frederick Kemp, in Young Frankenstein, Mel Brooks classic, and he was just so fantastic as that character, with the wooden mechanical arm that he had to force in place, and his dialect would be so heavily, Eastern European, that people couldn't completely understand him, and it just made it so funny, and he'd have to correct himself.
I remember I used to watch Malcolm in the Middle, and he showed up towards the end of his life on that show. And I didn't know who it was until he started talking. And I remember thinking, whoa, this guy sounds really familiar. And then I realized it was him. It sounded just like Triton.
Yep.
So yeah, Kenny Mars, he died in 2011. I know I didn't mention Camp. Camp died in 2005. He was only 70. He probably could have hung on there a little bit longer. But poor Kenneth Mars had pancreatic cancer. And we know that's rough.
Yeah.
And apparently that made him sick for a very long time toward the ends of his life. He couldn't voice Triton in the third Little Mermaid movie. He was just too sick to do it. But that one came out, I think, in 2006. So you see how long he was sick with this.
Right, right.
Always hard to lose him, but it's even harder when it's something like this.
Yeah, but he certainly left behind a great legacy.
And no, not just Disney. He was he played a version of Beethoven on Animaniacs. I didn't realize it was him then, but I definitely hear it now. He was the villain in We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. Have you seen that train wreck?
I have, and I think I remember at the time I thought it was such a great thing. I don't know why. But
I'm sure John Goodman and Yeardley Smith wanted to fire their agents after that one.
Yeah, but maybe I was just I guess blinded by the whole the animation wasn't that
It was very good. It was very good.
But wasn't that a Don Bluth production?
No, I think that was it Warner's? No, I don't even know who made this one.
It might have been Amblin.
Amblin? Without Bluth though. Bluth wasn't involved with that.
Right. But it looks very similar though.
Yeah, well, that was back in the early 90s when they had the cash to burn with that kind of animation. But anyway, moving on from Ken Mars, now we have an even bigger Darkwing villain. Maybe not physically, but Tino Insana. Am I saying it right? Insana?
I think it's Insana. If there was a tilde on the end, maybe it would be Insania, but I think it is Insana, yeah.
So Tino was born in 1948, and of Bushroot, man. Like, I know Dan and Michael Bell get a lot of attention for Megavolt and Quackerjack, but there's just something about Tino's voice. And that's just his voice. All his characters sound like this. He's a voice actor. If a character walks on screen and talks like that, it's Tino. And Bushroot just had this great voice. It's like so distinctive. I love it. What do you think of Bushroot? Me and you haven't talked about Bushroot much, have we?
No, I haven't. And I mean, it's funny because I always appreciated Bushroot. He had a lot of good episodes throughout the series, and he was a character that, I guess up until now, when I mean, especially if you've watched the new Ducktales incarnation, you begin to realize that, Bushroot has always been that character that, even though he's a villain, he is the one that is misunderstood. And I think having Tino in that original role, Tino just had this softness to his voice where, I mean, he could be threatening, but he was like kind of just a warming fellow. And
they made him sound wimpy without going for a stereotypical wimp voice.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
He was nervous and he was timid, but they could have gone in a really bland direction with it. But there's a warmth to the voice. You're right. There definitely is.
And I think that's probably why they chose him, because they probably were keeping in mind a particular actor, a very well-known actor who he shares a similar voice, a sound to, and that was John Candy. And I mean, John Candy, he was just, that lovable big guy. You felt, safe and secure with him. But I feel like that's probably one of the reasons they cast Tino, because he did have that John Candy sound.
Well, I'm going to mention a bunch of characters he voiced, and there's a lot of them have one thing in common that Bushroot doesn't have. A lot of his characters are big guys, but Bushroot is not. And I don't know, Bushroot's voice is just so distinctive. Like, you hear it and you love it. Where I first heard Tino before Darkwing Duck was on Bobby's World.
I remember that too. That was a great show.
And just Uncle Ted, man, like, he'd walk into the room and go, hey, Bobo. And it was just like, and when you get older, you realize that's Bushroot's voice.
Yeah.
And I can see the John Candy influence there. That's exactly, makes total sense when you mentioned John Candy. John Candy could have played that role.
Right.
And that was a fun show. I miss Bobby's World. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Yeah. Who wants a noogie?
Yeah, right. Some other Disney characters he played. I'm going to mention this one. It's very obscure and minor, but I'm going to mention it anyway. He played, and there's a reason. He played a villain on Bonkers. It was a really big, dumb bull named Stu. I'm mentioning him because his boss was a chicken named Chick, who was voiced by Chick Venera, who just passed away.
Yeah, yeah.
I wasn't going to single him out in this episode because he's Johnny T-Rex on Darkwing. We haven't even gotten to that episode yet.
Wasn't he one of the pigeons, the good feathers?
That's it.
So.
What do you mean by that? Yeah, I'm mentioning his role in that episode because it gives me an excuse to mention Chick Venera, who a month ago passed away. And luckily, there's a podcast to listen to. I'll plug it. The Animani Cast. They were able to get Chick Venera, Maurice LaMarche, and John Mariano together a couple of years ago for a Good Feathers reunion.
Oh, that would have been fantastic.
Right before COVID. If they hadn't done that, they never would have done it because now that Chick's gone. So that's why I mentioned the Bonkers episode. He did a bunch of villains on Bonkers. And he was a reoccurring character on Aladdin named Prince Unkuthma. Remember him?
Yes.
Barbarian.
But yeah. Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, I do remember that character being a little obnoxious, but I think they used him at least in 2 different episodes.
They used him 4 times, and he was only worth it for 1 time. Yeah, I didn't like him, but it's like when Disney found a voice actor they liked, like a utility one, not a main voice actor, they used him a lot. Like Camp, Kenneth Morris, Tino, and Sonia, constantly they would use these people.
Right.
Like another example would be Brad Garrett. Like he first showed up in a Goof Troop episode, and he's like in every other Bonkers episode. And it's just Disney definitely knew how to get the most from these actors. And Tino kept working up until the very end. He played the character Pig in the Barnyard Show from Nickelodeon, and he was Mr. Grouper on Bubble Guppies, which I'm familiar with because it was one of the very first shows my daughter was obsessed with. And I remember we would watch it with her on Nick Jr., and I would say to my wife, I think that's Bushroot. Because he would come in and he'd go, "Hey, kids, let's go outside," in Bushroot's voice.
That had to be revolutionary.
The voice had gotten older because Tino was suffering from cancer. But it was nice to hear him up until the very end. He died in 2017. He was 69, and yeah, it was cancer. So, he just didn't live long enough to show up at all these conventions with all these Darkwing people, I wonder if he would have done it if he was still alive.
I feel like he would have. He seemed like he was quite just a fun fellow, and I believe I don't think you can see him too much, but in the one video that Tad Stones posted of the Justice Duck's recording, and you hear him several times. I think the line where he's like, "I hope we don't run into any policemen," and the policeman's like, "Bushroot," and he's like, "Policeman!"
Yeah, everybody's in that except Terry and Hamilton Camp. No, not Hamilton Camp. Terry and Michael Bell are the only ones. Because Terry always recorded somewhere else. He never recorded with the cast. He recorded with the cast of DuckTales, but when Darkwing came along, he didn't record with the cast. But yeah, you can see Tino in that video along with Hamilton Camp. If I can find it, I'll post it up on the St. Canard Files Facebook group. Okay, now we're getting into some sad ones. These are really upsetting. If we have fans who this kind of thing upsets them, we're okay if you guys tune out. But we're talking about Dana Hill now, and this one is really upsetting. She was born in 1964. When she passed, she was only 32 years old. Dana Hill suffered from diabetes her entire life. Like she had childhood diabetes that made her appear younger than she actually was. In 96, she slipped into a diabetic coma and she suffered a stroke, which killed her. Again, the girl was only 32. She voiced the main character we know, of course, as Darkwing fans. She was Tank. But her big Disney role, and I think her biggest voiceover role, obviously, was. Do you know who I'm talking about, Bill?
That'd be Max from the Goof Troop.
Yep, and it's a shame that Max as a character, I think the Goofy movie version has totally eclipsed the Goof Troop version. And I feel like if Dana Hill was still alive, she'd probably still be showing up to she'd probably be going to conventions with Bill Farmer and Rob Paulson and Jim. Uh-huh. I think she'd be doing, because she'd only be in her 60s, not even. And it's just a shame that her version of Max doesn't get the love I think it deserves, because Goof Troop isn't as popular as Goofy movie. Other voices she did Buddy Gummy, one of the later additions to the Gummy Bears. Remember the Tom and Jerry movie? The original Tom and Jerry movie?
I mean, it's been a while, but I do recall seeing it a long time ago.
We've all seen it, the terrible one where they talk. She was Jerry. Honestly, she has this really distinctive voice. If Jerry had to have a voice, I was kind of glad it was Dana. And she was also one half of Duckman's two-headed son from the show Duckman. Did you ever watch Duckman?
I loved Duckman. I think at the time it was like one of those cartoons that I don't think was on my my parents' radar, because they told me I couldn't watch certain cartoons because they were adult oriented. But I feel like that one kind of
Duckman was very adult.
That was definitely adult, and I was surprised I managed to be able to watch it. But yes, I do remember that show.
He had the two-headed son, Charles and Mambo.
Yeah.
And Dana was one of the heads. And that was Jason Alexander as Duckman.
Yep.
He was great in that role. I haven't seen Duckman in probably 25 years. I should give that another watch. If we have younger fans who prefer the Disney stuff, this is not the show for you. But it definitely was a really entertaining. What channel did it air on? USA?
At least where I was watching it, I believe it was Comedy Central.
That might have been the reruns.
Yeah, maybe it was the rerun. So yes, maybe you're right. Maybe it was either USA or even. Actually, now that I think about it, it might have been on HBO at a time.
Maybe. Yeah. But Dana was Tank, and Dana had just, again, like a lot of these guys, a very distinctive voice. Her little kid voice, you can't miss it. It had just this squeaky little kid nature to it that just felt so natural.
Yep.
And I mean, it's funny how Tank and Max are like very different characters, but the voice is about the same.
I think all that Dana did was just lift the register from Tank, because obviously Tank, she was playing Tank, at a lower.
Hi, honk.
Yeah, exactly. But there were times where Tank actually sounded like Max, and vice versa.
There was an episode of Toys R Us when Quackerjack gives him the mini chainsaw, and Tank goes, "Cool, lead the way." He sounds just like Max.
Or in the episode Comic Book Capers, whenever Honker had to, I guess, sneak out of the house to go to the museum, and
no, Brush with Oblivion.
Oh, I'm sorry, Brush with Oblivion. That's right. Yeah, he'd say, "Sure, pal, I'll help you," and he was talking.
What are Big Brothers for?
Yeah, exactly. Sounded very much like Max, but
Mom, Dad, Honker ran away.
Yep. And then she had that similar voice in another non-Disney property, the Jetsons movie. She was Teddy 2.
We keep mentioning these terrible 80s and 90s films. Jetsons the movie is not good.
At the time, though, I mean, at least the age I was at the time, though, I was like, floored by some of these movies, especially that one, because
that's the movie where they had Janet. That's the movie where they had Janet Waldo do all of Judy Jetson's voice, and then they redubbed her with Tiffany.
Yeah.
And
How messed up is
totally
that?
screwed her over. Like, that was not cool.
Right.
Yeah, so that's that one Tom and Jerry movie. We're Back, a Dinosaur Story. The garbage we watched as kids, right?
Yes. But it still
and
entertained us.
And it would be a shame that Tank was written out of Darkwing Duck so early if Dana wasn't already doing Max by then. She clearly jumped right from Darkwing to Goof Troop. I like Max. I think I prefer the Goofy movie version of him because he's a lot more nuanced. But she was fun on Goof Troop.
Yes, for sure. And I think Dana certainly brought such an attitude to that role, and I thought she was definitely one in a million. And
I wonder what she'd be doing if she was still alive. I bet she'd still be acting.
Yep, for sure.
I mean, it's a shame whenever a lot of sadness. She still had so much of a career left to go. Situation with our next person's a little bit different, but now we're talking about the big one when it comes to Darkwing Duck. We're talking about Christine Cavanaugh, Gosalyn Mallard herself.
Yes.
Born in 1963. Obviously, Gosalyn. Like, what a voice, Bill. Gosalyn. Christine had this great voice to her that nobody had.
Yeah, she did.
And just Gosalyn could sound cute. Gosalyn could sound like a complete psycho. Gosalyn could sound angry. Gosalyn was just this perfect character that her voice was just amazing for this role. And
definitely.
Just Gosalyn has just all this great dialogue that works because of who Christine was. She gave Gosalyn so much life where if they had chosen the wrong actress for that role, it just wouldn't have worked.
No, and I completely agree. I feel like you needed somebody with that style of voice, and not to say that there weren't other actresses out there that had voices like that, like maybe E.G. Daily or Cheryl Chase, which is interesting because both of those wonderful talents were with her on a show that she also participated in.
We'll mention that one, yeah.
Soon enough, but yes, in Darkwing as Gosalyn, she had a way of bringing a spirit to that role, and it was interesting because I'm going to point out that there are so many times where Christine adds these extra syllables or consonants to words, like in the portion of Darkwing Dawn's the Duck I'm thinking of right now, whenever Darkwing first picks her up and saves her, and he says, have no fear, little one, Darkwing Duck has you now, and he says, I'm not one of the bad guys, and she's punching him, and she says, yeah, right, with a mask, or something like that. I can't do it justice, but yeah, she adds these extra syllables to it, and it's just fantastic.
And Christine had a way of taking corny like dialogue and just making it work. Like, any other actress screaming King Gear all the time would have been like, oh my God, stop saying that. But the way she does it with so much emotion, she's real. Like, yes. Gosalyn feels so real because that is not. See, I've grown not tired, but I've grown kind of indifferent towards E.G. Daly's little kid voice because I've been hearing it for 30 years and I'm kind of over it. The same thing with like Pamela Adlon and girls like that who are doing so many other shows. Even as much as I like Katsusi, she's been doing the same little kid voice for 30 years. Christine didn't have a chance to do this voice for 30 years. So it seems very unique to just that one era of these cartoons. And right. I haven't grown tired of her voice because it wasn't in everything for that long. And Gosalyn just stands out. She's amazing. But it's also all her characters are so different. I mean, let's get to the big one though. As much as we love Gosalyn, that was one short show. Chucky on Rugrats.
Yes.
Like, that's, I think, her most iconic character. I don't think it's her best character because I do think Gosalyn's better, but because Chucky was just a nasally little kid.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the character I think she's always going to be remembered for. And she did him the longest out of every other character. I mean, she was doing him for almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
And did you watch Rugrats?
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember I probably watched Rugrats for at least the first 3 or 4 years that it had come out. I think my interest in that might have tapered off a little bit when the show kind of had a more polished look. I liked
Rugrats when it was raw and rough around the edges.
Mm-hmm.
Like that first season where everything looked hideous is when I think it really worked. I mean,
Yes.
Honestly, I watched Rugrats and Doug mainly because I was killing time before Ren and Stimpy and Rocko's Modern Life, because that was my jam. I wasn't watching Rugrats when I was 14 just because I wanted to. I appreciate the show though, because again, you said Cheryl Chase was in it. She was Angelica. Kat Susie was the twins. E.G. Daly was Tommy. I mean, Cree Summer with Susie. And Michael Bell was on the show too.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, that's right.
Amazing group of people, and I think almost all of them except Cheryl Chase showed up on Darkwing at some point.
That's true.
So the other voice she did, which I loved, and it was a voice that was just straight out funny. She wasn't meant to do anything but be funny. Was Dexter on Dexter's Lab.
Yes.
I loved her on Dexter's Lab. Like, she was just fantastic. Because all she had to do was just scream and be annoyed in that bizarre, like, fake German accent.
Yeah. I feel like she kind of twisted her, like, the accent that she made or created for Dexter was kind of in the same way that Jim blended up some accents to make Don Carnage.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely, because you can't 100% tell what Don Carnage is, what he's supposed to be. Same thing with Dexter. Like, what part of Europe is that voice from? Like, it's DT, get out of my laboratory. Like, what is that? But yep. She was funny. She was funny as Dexter. Like, that show, like, I watched that religiously in college. That show went through a period where it was just hilarious, every single cartoon, and a lot of that just comes from Christine screaming at Dee Dee all the time. Another show with a great cast: Rob Paulson, Jeff Bennett. I think Kat Susie she was on that one too. She was a mom. Eddie Deason. Frank Welker. That's a great cast. Like 90s shows, man, they had all the best casts. So Christine was Dexter. She was Chucky. She was Gosalyn. She was on The Critic. She was Marty Sherman, Jay's son. Oblina from Real Monsters. A lot of people remember her as Babe the Pig too.
Yeah, that was a big movie when I was a kid. I mean, I remember going to see that at the drive-in, and I remember, that the parking lot was packed with people, and it was such a at this point now, like, I don't know about people younger than me, but I mean, I feel like it was cherished, that film, and there was a sweetness to the character, the Babe that she created. I feel like, if it wasn't for her voice, it probably wouldn't have the Babe probably wouldn't have gotten the notoriety it has received over the years. I mean, it's still referenced here and there too, but yeah, she definitely created that sound of Babe.
And this is where this deviates from everybody else. Very randomly and very mysteriously in 2001, Christine just retired. Like, just retired. I remember one day basically Dexter's Lab was like soft rebooted for a third season. And then Christine started off as Dexter for a few cartoons, and then she disappeared. And they pulled in Candy Milo, who Another Darkwing connection, she was Lamont from Paradox. Everybody connects to Darkwing sooner or later. And she was gone. She retired.
Yeah.
No, and nobody really knows why. She became very secretive. I've heard things, but I don't really want to talk about it. But she lived until 2014. She was in retirement for 13 years, not voice acting. And then one day we heard she passed away. And she was 51. And again, her death was not, the cause of death was not disclosed. Really, really weird. And we are much worse off without her.
Yeah, it's quite sad too, because she was so sweet, not just from what we know her from voice acting, but I was also going to bring up the fact that she did play a lot of random characters, just small bit parts in live action roles as well. But the one that stands out to me, she had guest appearances which turned into a reoccurring thing in a Nickelodeon show called Salute Your Shorts. And she played the eventual girlfriend of Ugg the counselor. She played Mona, and I just thought she was just so sweet and quirky in that show. And I recognized her voice right away, but when I finally saw her on screen, because I think that's the first time I'd ever seen her, I was like, oh my gosh, she's such a sweet person. She just had this infectious smile, and I just absolutely loved it.
When the Nicktoons would end on Saturdays and Sundays, I would just leave Nickelodeon on all day. So I did see Salute Your Shorts. And I remember when she showed up on the show and I heard the voice, I'm like, that's Goslin. I'm like, oh my God, that's Goslin. I had no idea. Like, to me, like, voice actors didn't make live action appearances. Like, I didn't connect that. But now I know they did it all the time. So yeah, and the saddest part is we have Jim, Katie, and Terry doing all these conventions now, and I feel like there's a gap. Someone should be there who's not there. And I feel like it's like always the elephant in the room when all of them get together. Like, Goslin's missing. And it's a shame. And when you talk to some of them, like we talked to Katie Lee a few times, and whenever she mentions Christine, it's with so much love, and you can also hear the pain in her voice to have lost her.
Right.
It's sad. And it's just sad to lose anybody, really. It's nobody lives forever, but when they go as young as Christine and Dana did, like, you feel it. When you hear the characters now, you laugh, but you're also like, man, I love this voice. I love these people, and this shouldn't have happened. But anyway, we're gonna do one more. We're gonna make this one quick. We don't have too much time, but I did want to mention this person. Only played one role in one Darkwing episode, but I do want to mention Lorenzo Music, because this guy was a legend, and he played several Disney Afternoon characters. So I kind of feel like let's just mention him quick. Lorenzo Music was born in 1937. Who was he most famous for, Bill?
Well, I mean, he was famous for doing Garfield the cat.
And he did Garfield the cat for 30 years?
Yeah.
No, that's more like 20 some odd years, like 25 years.
Yeah, maybe 25, yeah.
But it's like, I grew up with Garfield, and just that cynical, sarcastic voice coming out of that cat. They've tried to replicate Lorenzo's performance. Bill Murray has done it. Frank Welker has done it. They might as well just retire Garfield, because without Lorenzo Music, this character has gone to pot. And he's just got this voice that can be sarcastic and cynical, like I said, or sweet and tender. He voiced characters on these Disney Afternoon shows that were just these lovable guys that you just adored. Tummy Gummy, like the most sincere, sweetest character on that show.
Yep.
Like, you didn't want bad things to happen to Tummy Gummy.
No.
There was the episode where he was slowly turning into a tree. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, that was great. And then the one where he gained like quick speed because everybody said he was slow. I think wasn't that a spell cast by Zummy or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Faster than a speeding tummy, I think the episode was called.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I marathoned that episode last year. Now I can actually say I've seen it all and I can appreciate it. He was also Sergeant Dunder.
Mm-hmm.
Dunder! Sorry, Colonel. Again, just a big guy who was just really sweet. Acting off a complete lunatic. He was fun, and he was also, of course, on Darkwing, he was that pacifist spider. Not a great character, not a great role, not a great episode, but I just wanted an excuse to talk about Lorenzo music. The spider's fine. Sounds like Garfield with a head cold.
I feel like it was a cross between Tummy and Dunder a little bit, but he was very, very infantile too.
We could hurt someone, Mr. Moriarty. It's like, and Moriarty's like, of course we're gonna hurt somebody. And also Lorenzo music voiced one of the Fluffy Dogs. So just gotta mention the Fluffy Dogs. Just educate people on this obscure Disney trivia. Mm-hmm. But anyway, Lorenzo music, I think he passed away sooner than he should have. Not as soon as the girls did, but he died in 2001 from lung and bone cancer. He was only 64. He probably could have kept going. I don't know if he would have made it to 2021, but it was still a big shame to see him go. He was one of the early ones, considering when everybody else passed away. It was one of the earlier passings for sure. And like I said, Garfield's never been the same. But it's just sad to lose some of the old guard. It makes you wonder how much time a lot of the rest of them have left. Knock on wood, they'll be here for a long time.
True.
But before we wrap up, I'm just going to go down a list of a bunch of other Disney Afternoon voice actors and actresses we have lost. That includes Bill Scott, who voiced the original voice of Gruffy Gummy. June Foray, of course, the legendary June Foray. She was Ma Beagle, Grammy Gummy, and Magica. And, of course, and all the old Warner Brothers stuff, too. Paul Winchell was Zummy Gummy and Tigger. We got Alan Young, iconic Alan Young, like the only Scrooge McDuck in my heart, really. Chuck McCann, Burger Beagle, Bouncer Beagle, Dump Truck, bunch of other characters. One of those utility guys.
Yeah, he was also the Dream Finder in the Epcot ride, Journey into Imagination.
He had such a great jolly voice. Always loved him. Russi Taylor, Minnie Mouse, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, Webigail. She was married to Wayne Allwine, the voice of Mickey Mouse. They're both together now again. Very sad, but at least they're together. Joan Gerber, Mrs. Beakley, Hal Smith, Owl, Gyro Gearloose, Glomgold, and St. Peter on the Darkwing episode Dead Duck, Ed Gilbert, Baloo, and the great and iconic Tony J. Shere Khan, Frollo from Hunchback. He was Death on Darkwing Duck. Tony J. I think he was on Mighty Ducks as well. I'm not sure which character that was, but I know he was on it. But we've lost a lot of them. But let's be thankful for the ones we still have. And whenever we watch Darkwing or Ducktales or Tailspin, or if you want to watch We're Back, a Dinosaur Story, or Tom and Jerry movie, or Bonkers, or Aladdin, or whatever you feel like watching, just think of these people and all the joy they've given us in our lifetimes. Like, we're lucky to have these wonderful voice actors and actresses voicing these characters we love so much. I'm sure you agree.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I come from a nostalgic factor of growing up. That's an important thing when you lend your voice to these roles. You know, it's not just a visual thing. It's also something that, through the art of sound and voice, they breathe life into these characters, and it sticks with you for a long time. And that's why, I would always, seek out at the end of every credit scene or a credit sequence from every show, who was in there, who did that, and I just try to puzzle together, okay, this was that person, because this was before internet. And it's nice to know that I'm able to make those connections to see who was a part of that, because that was a major factor in loving these shows and these characters.
Yeah. So to Christine, Dana, Tino, Kenneth, Hamilton, Lorenzo, and everybody else I mentioned, rest in peace, guys. We love you and your characters. Thank you so much for making our world a better place.
For sure.
So we are the St. Canard Files, a Darkwing Duck podcast. You can find us on all podcast apps: Stitcher, Spotify, Google, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, or just watch us on YouTube if you're so inclined to watch YouTube, because you can actually subscribe to YouTube, help our numbers go up by actually subscribing. Don't just watch, please. It helps us out a lot. And we have communities on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, and Reddit. So join any one of the communities you want. Whatever your poison is for social media, we're there. And no shout-outs tonight. That's usually Will's thing. But and the next episode, I know last week we heard Stan and Will review a Darkwing comic. Next week, for what I think might be our final bonus episode, Stan and Will will be doing another Darkwing comic. And then we should be getting back to the last 3 episodes of the show: Clash Reunion, Malice's Restaurant, and Mutants on the Bound. Not Mutants, who we did that one. An Extinct Possibility, in which that's the episode with Johnny T-Rex, voiced by the late Chick Venera. But until then, Bill, once again, thank you for being on with me tonight.
It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. And this probably may end up being my last appearance on the St. Canard Files. So just let me say it's been fantastic. I love what you and Will have created here. And I hope that this boosts the not just the Darkwing Duck community, but the Disney Afternoon community, because we need this stuff. We need it to stay alive. And adults, pass this on to your kids, because this is important.
Well, have a great night, everybody, and happy 30th birthday, Darkwing Duck.
Happy anniversary, Darkwing.
Good night. Stay dangerous.
Take care.